Picture this. It's 1943, the height of the Battle of the Atlantic, and a German U-boat commander peers through his periscope at what appears to be an easy target, a lone British warship cutting through the choppy waters. But as he prepares to strike, something feels wrong. The ship's movements are too deliberate, too confident. Within minutes, his submarine is under devastating attack from a vessel that seems to have appeared from nowhere. What he's encountered isn't just any warship. It's a Black Swan-class sloop, one of Britain's most feared U-boat hunters, and his worst nightmare just became reality. The story I'm about to tell you reveals how a class of ships that most people have never heard of became the ultimate terror of the German submarine fleet. These weren't massive battleships or sleek destroyers. They were something far more dangerous. Purpose-built killing machines designed for one mission only, hunting and destroying U-boats with ruthless efficiency. During World War II, the Battle of the Atlantic wasn't just another theater war. It was a lifeline that would determine whether Britain survived or fell to Nazi Germany. German U-boats prowled beneath the waves like underwater wolves, sinking merchant vessels and cutting off the vital supplies that kept Britain fighting. But while history books focus on the famous battles and the big-name ships, there's a lesser-known story of hunters who turned the tables on these predators. The Black Swan-class sloops were born from desperate necessity. By 1938, British naval planners could see the writing on the wall. War with Germany was inevitable, and they knew from the previous World War that German submarines would once again threaten Britain's maritime lifelines. But this time, they were determined to be ready with something the Germans wouldn't expect. Traditional destroyers were fast and powerful, but they had a fatal flaw when it came to anti-submarine warfare. They were too expensive to build in large numbers and too valuable to risk in the dangerous game of submarine hunting. What Britain needed was something different. A ship that could dedicate itself entirely to finding and killing U-boats without the compromises that came with multi-role vessels. The result was revolutionary. The Black Swan class wasn't designed to fight other surface ships or provide fleet escort duties. Every aspect of these vessels was optimized for one purpose: detecting, tracking, and destroying submarines with unprecedented effectiveness. At first glance, these ships might have seemed unremarkable. They were smaller than destroyers, displacing around 1,300 tons, and they weren't particularly fast by naval standards. But looks can be deceiving, because what the Black Swan class lacked in size and speed, they more than made up for in specialized lethality. The secret lay in their revolutionary design philosophy. Unlike other warships that tried to do everything adequately, the Black Swan class did one thing exceptionally well. Their hulls were designed for optimal sonar performance, with clean lines that minimize interference with their detection equipment. Their engine rooms were specially soundproofed to reduce noise that might mask the subtle sounds of enemy submarines. But the real game changer was their armament. These ships carried the most advanced anti-submarine weapons available at the time. The centerpiece was their Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar system, a weapon so effective that German U-boat commanders learned to fear its distinctive sound signature. Unlike traditional depth charges that had to pass over a submarine to be effective, the Hedgehog fired a pattern of contact-fused projectiles ahead of the ship, creating a lethal umbrella of explosions that could destroy a submarine instantly upon contact. The Black Swan class also carried an impressive array of depth charges, but these weren't your standard naval explosives. They were equipped with the latest proximity fuses and could be set to detonate at precise depths based on sonar readings. This meant that even a near miss could be fatal to a submerged U-boat. What made these ships truly terrifying to German submarine crews wasn't just their weapons, it was their sensors. The Black Swan class carried the most advanced sonar systems available, capable of detecting submarines at ranges that seemed almost magical to enemy commanders. But more importantly, these ships carried experienced crews who had been trained specifically in anti-submarine warfare tactics. The psychological impact on German U-boat crews cannot be overstated. Imagine being hundreds of feet underwater, believing yourself hidden in the ocean's depths, only to hear the unmistakable sound of a Black Swan-class sloop's sonar pinging above you. That sound meant you had been found by a predator that was faster, better armed, and more persistent than anything you had faced before. German submarine commanders began reporting encounters with these mysterious British ships that seemed to appear from nowhere and pursue them with relentless determination. Unlike destroyers, which might break off an attack to respond to other threats. The Black Swan class had the luxury of singular focus. Once they detected a U-boat, they could pursue it for hours, even days, wearing down the submarine's battery life and forcing it to surface where it could be destroyed. The tactical innovations employed by Black Swan-class crews were equally impressive. They developed new hunting patterns that maximized their sonar coverage while minimizing the chances of a U-boat escaping detection. They learned to work in coordination with aircraft and other ships, creating layered defense networks that made submarine operations extremely hazardous. One of the most effective tactics was a creeping attack, where a Black Swan-class sloop would slowly approach a detected submarine while maintaining perfect sonar contact. The submarine crew would hear the approaching ship, but couldn't determine exactly where the attack would come from. The psychological pressure was enormous, knowing that at any moment, a deadly barrage of hedgehog projectiles could rain down on their position. The statistics tell the story of their effectiveness. Throughout the war, Black Swan-class sloops were responsible for sinking or damaging dozens of German U-boats. But their impact went far beyond the raw numbers. Their presence in convoy routes, patrol areas forced German submarines to operate with extreme caution, reducing their effectiveness and limiting their ability to attack Allied shipping. German naval intelligence struggled to understand what they were facing. Reports from surviving U-boat crews described ships that seemed purpose-built for submarine destruction, but the specifications didn't match any known British vessel types. This intelligence gap worked to Britain's advantage, as German submarines often underestimated the threat these ships represented until it was too late. The hunting success of the Black Swan class wasn't just about technology and tactics. It was about the men who sailed them. These crews were volunteers who had specifically requested anti-submarine duty. They were motivated by the knowledge that every U-boat they destroyed meant dozens of merchant seamen who would live to see another day. This personal investment in their mission created a level of dedication and skill that was difficult for the enemy to counter. The ships themselves became legends among both Allied and Axis forces. German U-boat crews gave them fearful nicknames and developed elaborate procedures for avoiding detection when Black Swan-class ships were known to be operating in an area. Meanwhile, Allied merchant sailors looked for these distinctive silhouettes on the horizon as signs of protection and safety. The technological advantages of the Black Swan class extended beyond their obvious weapons and sensors. Their engineering spaces were designed for quick acceleration and rapid maneuvering, allowing them to respond instantly to sonar contacts. Their fuel capacity was optimized for extended patrols, meaning they could remain on station far longer than other escort vessels. Perhaps most importantly, these ships incorporated lessons learned from the early years of the war. British naval architects have studied every U-boat attack, every failed depth charge run, every missed opportunity to destroy enemy submarines. The Black Swan class represented the culmination of this analysis, incorporating solutions to problems that had plagued anti-submarine warfare since the beginning of the conflict. The psychological warfare aspect of these ships was just as important as their physical capabilities. German U-boat crews began reporting increased stress and fatigue during patrols in areas where Black Swan-class ships were known to operate. The knowledge that these specialized hunters were prowling above created a constant state of tension that affected crew performance and decision-making. The impact on German submarine operations was profound. U-boat commanders who had previously operated with relative impunity found themselves forced to adopt defensive tactics that reduced their effectiveness against merchant shipping. They had to spend more time submerged, reducing their ability to pursue targets. They had to avoid certain routes and operating areas where Black Swan-class ships were known to patrol. The success of the Black Swan class also influenced naval design philosophy for decades to come. The concept of purpose-built anti-submarine vessels became a standard part of naval planning, and many of the innovations first implemented on these ships became standard features of later warships. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of the Black Swan class story is how they achieved their success despite operating in some of the most dangerous waters in the world. The North Atlantic during World War II was a hellscape of storms, enemy aircraft, and prowling submarines. Yet these ships and their crews consistently put themselves in harm's way to protect vital supply convoys and hunt down enemy submarines. The crews of these ships developed an almost supernatural ability to detect and track submarines. Veterans of Black Swan-class ships often spoke of being able to sense when a U-boat was nearby, even before their instruments confirmed it. This intuitive understanding of submarine behavior, combined with their advanced equipment, made them extraordinarily effective hunters. German naval records captured after the war revealed the true impact these ships had on U-boat operations. Submarine commanders were specifically warned about the characteristics of Black Swan-class ships and given detailed instructions on how to avoid them. The mere presence of these vessels in an operational area was enough to significantly reduce German submarine effectiveness. The legacy of the Black Swan class extends far beyond World War II. Their design principles influenced the development of modern anti-submarine warfare vessels, and many of the tactics they pioneered are still taught in naval academies today. They proved that specialized vessels, designed for specific missions, could be far more effective than larger, more versatile ships when it came to particular types of warfare. The men who served aboard these ships deserve recognition not just for their courage, but for their technical expertise and tactical innovation. They transformed anti-submarine warfare from a largely defensive activity into an aggressive hunting operation that turned the tables on Germany's submarine fleet. As we look back on this remarkable chapter in naval history, it's important to remember that the Black Swan-class sloops succeeded not just because of their advanced technology, but because of the dedication and skill of the sailors who operated them. These ships and crews represent one of the most successful examples of specialized military innovation during World War II. The story of why German U-boats fear the Black Swan class is ultimately a story about the power of focused innovation and dedicated service. In the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, these relatively small ships proved that sometimes the most effective predator is not the biggest or the fastest, but the one that is perfectly adapted for its prey. The Black Swan-class sloops earned their fearsome reputation through proven results, turning the hunters into the hunted and helping to secure Allied victory in the Battle of the Atlantic.